University, has just been nominated for the Nobel Prize for Peace. And on this day of the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas and Gaza and Palestine, you know, I know Bethlehem University could do with the Peace Studies Department. So let's get on with it. That's the project. 45, and that's reclaiming the right to inner peace for all of us, for all mankind. Yes. Okay, there we are. 99 names of peace. We've done the first 2 today. Right. Any questions about that, or comments, or?
Yeah. Well, last thing first, maybe the Philippines and.
Yeah. Did you go there on your
Yes, I've been
tours?
there on many of the islands in the Philippines.
Oh, right. Because
Cebu-
you were in the Merchant Marine,
Yeah.
Norway.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's a lot of work that needs to be done down there as well on peace, especially down in Cebu Island, which is south of Mindanao, where
Yeah.
Manila is. There's a lot of hatred and horrible stuff going on.
Is that where the Islamic community is?
Yeah.
Is mainly.
Yeah.
And there were some bases where they were training certain Islamic militants
Yeah.
back about
But then
20
again,
years ago.
I walked across some of the islands through the jungle and absolutely peace. So it's
It's a beautiful part of the world,
it
actually,
is
isn't it?
absolutely.
And it's not very well known in Europe.
No.
I found it incredible to be there.
I've been there several times in several places. So
Yeah.
One specifically one little island we were docked on a pier, like half a mile long pier,
Right.
right on the other part of it, and me and the electrician, we decided we'd like to go for a cold beer. It's Sunday and we've nothing else to do.
Sure.
So there was a village. We could see the little lights from the village in the evening when we came in. So Sunday morning we started walking. After a couple of hours, there was some sort of parade. I think it looked like it was some sort of a Catholic parade. They had maybe it was a carnival type parade, Catholic, and when we came into town, the first thing we saw was a small petrol station, Getty Oil. But all the petrol pumps, which looked like modern pumps, they were hand cranked. They had no electricity.
Ah.
And we asked for a cold beer, and the bartender shouted it for a little kid, and he ran away. I gave him some money, and he ran away. He was gone for 5-10 minutes. And he came back dragging a big lump of ice.
Oh, right.
He'd been to the local ice storage, gotten some ice so we could get in our beer.
Oh, okay. So it got to be cold.
It got to be cold.
That's sweet.
So
Interesting.
So that's. But the other part of the Philippines, thank God I didn't see a lot of the troubles, but we knew they were about
Sure.
already
Yeah.
then, and back in the 70s, 80s also.
So I read a biography of Magellan, the Portuguese explorer who was the first to try and circumnavigate the Earth. He set off across the Atlantic from Portugal, went round Latin America and got across the Pacific to the Philippines. And his story, his end is rather tragic, I discovered from reading his life story. He got on quite well with the locals and made deals and got his ship restocked and gave them bartering goods and things. It was all ready to go. But he'd fallen out with the people on one island. I can't remember exactly why. They'd insulted him or stolen something or whatever. And stupidly, he did that arrogant thing of, I'm the big European conquistador. And he landed on the island to punish them. But he only took about 20 armed men. They all had primitive guns, arquebuses or whatever. And he thought, well, that's not a problem. They're just natives. We can finish them off and get back on the ship. when he landed, and they landed in small boats from their main ship, when they landed on this island, sandy beach, they discovered about 500 natives, bristling with spears, arrows, swords, everything, battle ready. And they had like nothing. So of course he should have immediately got back on the ship and just escaped. But instead they charged at them. I mean, it's like Rorke's Drift, but in reverse. And they were just mown down. And Magellan got arrows thrown at his legs, and he tried to get back to the small boats, but died in the shallows. They came, and that was the end of one of the greatest explorers European culture produced. And the ship went on and completed the round-the-world trip. His life story is extraordinary, Magellan, but it's so tragic that he died like that, so stupidly. But psychologically, that sums up the arrogance of European colonialism.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
We've learned our lesson now, I think. Right, okay, any comments from...
Yes, another one was about peace, and the first document you spoke about Native American people.
Yeah.
And I started to read the document, but I read maybe 5 of 30 pages. And I remember one of the key questions was about the social organization of the tribes.
Yeah.
There is no prison. Why? How do they resolve conflicts? How do they educate children? Is it competitiveness or something else? What is the importance of telling the truth? You spoke about that.
Yeah.
And I think that's so fundamental topics. As far as peace society is concerned, I think that's the main point to focus on for like schools, alternative schools. We heard of like Freinet or any other Montessori or
or home educators.
Yes, it's another way to educate people than the way we do. I don't know about other places in Europe, but in France I know that it's not good.
The state of schools,
No, it's an apprentissage to be a nasty guy.
Well, that's completely the opposite of what it should be.
Yeah.
I mean, my solution to the school problem was to go and train as a philosophy teacher in the schools.
Yeah.
And I regard the philosophy department of every school as like a little centre for truth studies. And so getting the kids to read Plato or Aristotle or understand the wisdom and depth of our own culture, classical culture. I mean, the French schools are called lycées, which is named after the Academy of Aristotle. And, truth is supposed to be at the core of all this stuff. But they've axed philosophy from a lot of schools. That's why I think we should, campaign to get it back. I don't know about in Norway. Do you have philosophy taught in the schools? Did you study it?
No, not as a subject. No.
Well, there we are. You see, now that's another project, by the way.
Yeah, we had sort of history, went a little bit to Greek, and through the philosophers, but philosophy was not a subject.
So you didn't see the periodic table on the classroom wall?
Definitely no.
Well, this is coming, folks. This is the plan.
No, but I have the image of Scandinavia countries. Norway is part of Scandinavia, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And with a strong social commitment among children.
Yeah, there used to be very, very strong. The schools are okay. The social commitment is very much a tradition, especially in Norway, more so than in Sweden. I think Denmark, Sweden still got some lords and some royalties scattered around, and
well, Norway has a king.
Many pockets of so-called old money, they call it. There are many lords and
Aristocrats.
yeah, aristocrats in Sweden.
Yeah.
More
Well,
so
they were
than-
an empire. I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have that in Norway actually. No aristocracy. There is a bit in Denmark as well, but Norway's pretty cleaned up. We got rid of the Swedes back in 1905.
Yeah, I detect a certain
that-
inter-Scandinavian rivalry going on here.
Now we've
I'm neutral on this because I
Yeah.
like Swedes and
no.
Danes.
Today it's not. It's
I
not
even
an
like
issue
some
today.
aristocrats. I just
Yeah.
want to warn you. So
Yeah.
I just think by being an aristocrat, you can also tell the truth, and if you
yeah.
do, then you're more powerful. You can be effective.
Yeah, I mean,
There was some good aristocrats in history.
aristocracy actually has made Sweden a fairly rich country, in spite of them not having oil like we found in the Norwegian sector of the North Sea, and so Norway, we actually are probably the wealthiest country in the world per capita.
Sure. Well, that's good to know. If we want to publish the third edition of the
So
book,
my pension is
we'll go to Norway.
my pension is secure.
Excellent. Okay. Yes. So, I just to finish, I agree what you were saying about what the lessons we can learn from studying North American culture and American culture generally is about the fact of no prisons, and the community acted as a kind of self-policing and self-educating community, and the power of the elders is very important, who've been through I mean, kids all, have to learn how to tell the truth. It's not necessarily instinctive, because if they're going to get into trouble, they won't turn up. So that's where the elders come in, and the council of elders used to dominate the tribal structures, and particularly with the Iroquois tribes, that was quite important. Yeah. This is Bishy having a little coughing attack. It's something she does.
Yeah, we have cats ourselves.
So anyway, yes, that's very important. I discovered about the importance of one particular elder called Deganawida, who introduced a system in the region of the Northeast Lake regions, and he taught about the importance of truth as the foundation for peace. And it was the beginning of a federation among the tribes where they agreed to arbitrate all their quarrels, not to go to war. And it was because of Deganawida, he's like the Moses of the American Indian people, I discovered, when I met people that told me about him. I'd never been taught about him. But I mentioned him in the book under Iroquois language. So we'll look at that another time in more detail. Yes, okay, let's go on and choose one of these then. The periodic table. You can choose by chance.
I'm on 22.
You want to do with 22 again? Okay. You sure about that? I think that's very appropriate, because it's the Norse and Germanic religion, the primal religion of the Scandinavian people. So that's fine. Okay. Here there's 168 boxes to choose from. Have you found one?
Yes, 59, the Presocratics.
Ah. Okay. Well, that's great. So, 59, eh? Let's start with that. I tend to do them in kind of chronological sequence, and the pre-Socratics were pretty ancient. So, it's a term used in the history of philosophy for all the earliest thinkers in the Bronze Age and Iron Age of ancient Greece and the coast with Turkey. And writing had just been invented. The Greek alphabet was just shaped. We pinched it from the Phoenicians, shaped it into the Greek alphabet, and it became a very subtle way of writing down thoughts and ideas. And so they began to write philosophical texts. We know that, Homer had written in poetry ideas that were quite philosophical. In Homer, the gods are watching everything we humans do, and different gods are on different teams, as it were. Obviously, the goddess of love wants everything to have a happy ending and everyone fall in love. The god of war, Ares, wants more battles and all the rest of it. And ironically, they're married. So there's a sort of irony in Greek mythology at work. And then around about the time of Homer, there was a famous figure, Orpheus, who I think we can classify him as a pre-Socratic philosopher. He was a sage from the mountains north of Greece, what is now north of Macedonia even. But he came down into Greece and he set up a secret academy, the Orphic Brotherhood. He taught through music about the harmony behind the universe. And we all know the legend of how he went into the underworld to bring his wife Eurydice back. I think this is an amazing myth that's come down. But what it's really about is about the power of music to heal people's souls and to reach into the depth of people. His successor, if you want, and archaeologists have found places in what is now Bulgaria that are from the time of Orpheus. It's interesting. We know that his successor really was Pythagoras, who was a kind of Orphic mystic, and one of the most interesting figures in intellectual history. Most school children learn about the Pythagorean theorem, about calculating triangles and their angles, but he was much more than that. He also was a musicologist who discovered the correlation between sound, pitch and length of string, so he realised that that music is a mathematical phenomenon, that maths is a kind of key to understanding reality. He taught non-violence. His disciples were sworn to non-violence. He travelled in Egypt. He spent 2 years studying in Egypt. No, some say up to 10 years, learning about their religion and their philosophy, which was very strongly geometrical and mathematical. And he came back to southern Italy, founded a school, the first academy or university for philosophy in history in the West, and it was at Crotona. I've been there nearly on a train. I went past it. I didn't have time to get off. I was getting a ferry to Athens. But it's just an amazing part of the world, southern Italy. Magna Graecia it was called. And he had women, disciples, and men. He was married. His wife was a philosopher. His daughters became philosophers. And they've left texts. Amazing. Sadly, he was killed by a brutish kind of thug type of person that attacked the academy and burned it because Pythagoras hadn't let him join. And there's being a philosopher sometimes has a certain danger attached to it because people get very angry. And this is what I call Sophiaphobia. The anti-philosophical thrust is also there in people. His followers say that when Pythagoras was in the building, it was on fire. Don't worry, because he simultaneously appeared in Athens, 1,000 miles away, alive. And the legend was that he was actually an incarnation of Apollo, so he's indestructible. So he didn't really die. Discuss. But his teachings lived on. And so he had disciples who scattered. And later, at the time of Socrates, when Plato he went to go and find Pythagorean students and talk to them about what he taught. And a lot of Plato is actually Pythagoras rewritten. his interest in mathematics and music and order and harmony, which you get, and also the Muses, which runs through from Orpheus through to Pythagoras, down to Plato. So it's an amazing succession of intellectuals. Then you have in Miletus, you have some other philosophers, Thales, who was from Miletus, who the question these pre-Socratic thinkers was asking was, what does everything come from? What's it all made of? What is life? Where does it come from? What's the origin point of everything? And they call that in Greek the arche, A-R-C-H-E. What's the arche? And Thales said, having spent years studying this matter, well, it's obviously water. Everything comes from water because we're made of it. We drink. We're watery beings. We depend on water for life. If we have no water, we die. And so, and this is even before the discovery of the cell, the body made of water. He intuited that water is the arche of life. And that's quite interesting because it's obviously true to some extent. Discuss. And now, so the word archaeology is from the same root. An archaeologist is someone going into the source of the deep time of history. But now they're discovering water on other planets. We've got telescopes that's discovering water on different planets. And we know that water is around in the space between stars. So it is very prevalent. And wherever water is, I think life will be found. Maybe simple cell life, but something. So water and life go together, that's what Thales said. He was also an astronomer, and we don't have much of his writings, just fragments have come down. Heraclitus was also from Miletus. He differed from Thales. He said, water's important, but without a spark, you just end up with more water. I mean, water can't create life. You need a fire to energize the water. And you need heat to transmute that water into life. That's why we eat, is to obtain the energy. So Heraclitus said, no, fire is the primal element, the arche. Because water comes from fire, and he pointed at the sun. We know that all the planets, with all their water, originate in the stars. They're thrust out through the nuclear cycle of stars. And if you trace it right back to the Big Bang, or the Big Bangs, or sequences of Big Bangs, I mean, they come out of this huge fiery explosion. So that was Heraclitus's insight. And I think he's also right. I mean, I'm not going to hold forth and say which of them is right. I think they're both right. Water's key, but so is fire. And then others of these pre-Socratics said, no, air is the arche. And others said, no, it's mind, because it all comes from divine mind. And Pythagoras said it comes from number. For him, number is the arche. Anyway, the point is that these thinkers were the first philosophers that we know in European history. They were doing similar stuff in India at the same time, and in China, and but in the periodic table, the pre-Socratics are specifically this bunch of intellectuals. And I think they were inspired. I have a book by a Baha'i author about how Persian religion inspired these early philosophers. Because the Persian Empire was already a thing at that point. And some of them went to Babylon and studied there, which was then run by the Persians. And we know Pythagoras spent time in Babylon, for instance. I mean, where there was already 2,500 years of literate speculation about the gods and about number. And we know, for instance, the Pythagorean theorem was invented in Babylon 1,000 years before Pythagoras. So it wasn't his idea at all. He pinched it from the Babylonians. So, yeah, they're pretty amazing. Another one is Empedocles. Empedocles said, earth, air, fire and water recycle into each other. So fire eventually becomes water. Water eventually becomes earth. Earth eventually becomes air. So they're all one thing, just recycling. And that's very close to the Chinese insight. Because in the Chinese element theory, they alternate. So I think what's interesting about philosophy is that different cultures are finding the same stuff out, at different times. So that's the pre-Socratics. Okay. Is there any questions about that? Is that clear? One little vignette I'll share. I met a chap called Sir Karl Popper, who lectured at the London School of Economics, one of the most famous British philosophers of the 20th century, a philosopher of science, who'd written about how we know things, and he came up with a theory about proving what we know is true. Great man. Anyway, he became fascinated. He was really fascinated by these pre-Socratics. I met him at the end of his life after he gave a lecture at the LSE, and he wrote a book about the pre-Socratics, Parmenides, because they were the birth of science as well. What they were doing was really inventing science, said Popper, and therefore that's why they're worth studying still. Yeah, so anyway, right, let's look at the other one then. The Norse or Germanic traditions, number 22. Yes. They came up fairly recently. I think we were doing, I think they came up, but it's interesting the tradition has survived in Norse and Germanic culture, and also in the Anglo-Saxon world. It was associated particularly with the runes, which I've talked about before. Did you as a boy ever learn about the runes in Norwegian school? Did you ever make a set? Or
We didn't make runes as such, but we knew about runes, and it's been a part of the education from childhood. Yeah.
Right. So you understood. So traditionally they were discovered by Odin, who's the chief god of wisdom for the Norse culture, sometimes called Woden or Wotan. What do you say in Norwegian?
Odin.
Odin, okay. Excellent. And it's the origin of Woden's Day or Wednesday. In Anglo-Saxon he was called Wotan. Woden or Wednesday is named after him. And he I think he was like a sort of shamanic seer who went through some personal journeying and realised that life isn't just one thing. In a sense, his answer to what is the arche was the runes, which represent different sounds. So this is called by religious studies people sonic mysticism, right? So each sound is an element. These are sacred sounds, and together they stand for the different, we could call them psychic elementals that together coalesce and create the world we see, which is plural. There are many colours, there's not just one colour. There's many shapes, there's many patterns, many numbers. There's an infinite display in this universe. And so I think what these seers of Scandinavia discovered was they found a language to express that plurality. So I've studied the runes for years and they're fascinating. I've written a book about them. Could you pass that book behind you? That purple book on the edge, that's the one. Yeah. And so the runes were sacred, and you were initiated into the study of them and the use of them by a priest or a rune master. The word runen means a mystery or a secret, and it's something that is a holy mystery, if you want. Because obviously, if you have a tool that can give you access to the secrets of existence, that's quite a powerful tool to have, and that's what the runes do. So, one way of using them is to crack the secrets of time, because runic cosmology or Scandinavian cosmology teaches that life comes in a cycle. One of the most exciting runes is called Jera, which is like Y or J, and it's shaped like a spinning wheel, and it stands for cyclical time, and it's the origin of our word in English, year. Okay, so we can study time's patterns. They are a recurring cycle in our lives. We all start out as babies, become children, grow into adolescence. You know, the cycle is the same whether you're American Indian or Norse or Filipino or whatever. And what the runes do is they can read where you're at in the cycle. If you're working with someone that's skilled in them and has worked with them, they can read where your weird is moving, in which direction. The word weird is the word for destiny or fate. Do you have a word like that in Norwegian? We have weird in English. W-Y-R-D.
No,
Not now.
not as far as I know.
What's destiny or fate?
Skjebne.
Sorry?
Skjebne.
Skjebne.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. I will find the equivalent, because there must be some kind of word somewhere in Norwegian that's a descendant of this, because this is a really big concept. And it gives us the word as well. What's a word? It's ord, is it? Ord. You've dropped the W.
Yeah, and B also a silent D, so O.
Okay, but now that's similar to Odin, because you drop the W as well. You don't do Odin, you do Odin. And a word, it becomes an ord. That's interesting.
It's the same in Swedish and Danish as well.
Ah, right. Interesting. So, anyway, the runes, okay, just very briefly. Ansuz, the letter A. Berkana is the letter B, which stands for the life force, being, becoming. Gifu, which is like an X, is grace, divine grace, and stands for the gift, givingness. Dagaz, the day, is like a kind of battle axe almost. It stands for light, and the letter D. Win is the letter W, and stands for victory, winning. It's the origin of to win in English. And what I was saying earlier about how victory is peace, that's there in the runes if you study the meaning of win, what it actually means. And then you've got Kenaz, which is K, which is there in words to do with knowledge, Kno.
Kunnskap.
What's that?
Kunnskap.
In Norwegian,
Yeah.
meaning...
Knowledge.
Okay, and you pronounce the K, you see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Kunskap. I like that. Yes. Yeah. So there's, so the secret of these runes.
Also the day,
Yeah,
dag,
yeah,
is a day in Norwegian.
Doug.
Mhm.
Well, there we go. Yeah, it's the D. So I bought this book in 1981. I visited